Whereas things are getting very heated in Washington, D.C., as a select group from Congress has been given access to the unredacted Epstein files, which reference our president far, far more than anyone could have imagined.
Well, he said that I spent time on Jeffrey Epstein's island. I didn't. I mean, he's a lightweight, this guy. He's a terrible, I think he's terrible. I thought he did a terrible job at the Grammys. I thought the whole...
Everything would go according to plan. A few throwaway jokes, a few easy laughs from the audience, and perhaps a subtle jab at the headline of the day were all present in this usual late-night beginning. Nothing excessively daring or dangerous, simply the routine. However, it was not the case. The atmosphere changed in a way that no one anticipated when Jimmy Kimmel turned his attention directly to Donald Trump. Suddenly, it seemed less like a monologue and more like a live wire had been touched at 0.5959 seconds. The pressure of the cause caused something to crack. It wasn't the sound equipment either. It all came together because of the...
...are a big deal, obviously, and a big story, a story that Donald Trump would prefer just goes away, but it won't just go away. It's salacious. It's the kind of story that makes headlines, and he knows that. So what he does is he bombards us with a dozen other crazy things to try to flood the...
Part of it is not watchable, but he was a lousy host. I'd say not as bad as Jimmy Kimmel, but pretty close. And no, he made a statement about me and Jeffrey Epstein. I have nothing to...
Over time, what started out as a standard comedic scene developed into something far more dramatic. And as the jokes continued to land, you could practically feel the temperature increasing. This was neither a cool-headed discussion or a careful analysis of policy issues. It was more akin to witnessing a well-planned explosion. From the exterior, everything appeared well-maintained and polished, but beneath the building, brick by brick, there was a gentle shaking that made it clear that the foundation itself was under stress.
You know, it's a term you hear a lot, but rarely when it is literally true. And most of all, it is so bananas that the guy who's in charge of releasing all these files and redacting all this evidence is Donald Trump's own personal defense attorney. You know, when Trump was convicted of 34 felony counts of fraud, Todd Blanche was his lawyer. Now Todd Blanche is the gatekeeper to the Epstein file.
Wait a moment. We're only getting started. So if you're enjoying this breakdown and would like to see more in-depth analyses like this, please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss what comes next. Let's get back into it now. Trump regarded late-night hosts as little more than background noise for many years. Maybe a little annoying, but not worth paying much attention to. He has previously sparred with comedians and dismissed their jokes as unimportant. However, there was a different vibe in this time. Kimmel didn't simply make a few superficial jokes and move on. He studied the picture. He gave the ego a prod. He challenged the broader narrative that has been associated with Trump for many years, and everything was altered by that change in strategy. What is Trump's reaction to that? I'll explain how. By launching another assault on Canada.
How is Trump responding to that? I'll tell you how. By attacking Canada again. He's at it again. This time, he's threatening to close down a new bridge they're almost finished with that connects Windsor to Detroit. He wrote, "As everyone knows, the country of Canada has treated the United States very unfairly for decades." I didn't know that, actually. They always seem pretty fair to me, but okay. Now, things are...
Trump didn't exactly ignore this. To be honest, late-night television relies heavily on spectacle and hyperbole. That is a component of the formula. But it wasn't just the humor that made this confrontation so captivating. That's what the humor revealed. Trump seemed to edge further toward obvious displeasure the more Kimmel delved into the ridiculous aspects. We are all aware of how quickly frustration can spread. Outrage travels. It multiplies. Additionally, with the current media landscape. Interview. It seemed like traditional late-night taunt.
So much we can take in. So to distract us, right now one of the things he's doing is suing everybody. Now, last night, I mentioned Trump is suing the IRS that he runs, for $10 billion, and that he's planning to negotiate a settlement to that suit with himself, which is just, if any other president, it would be the biggest story of their whole 4 years in office. For Trump, it doesn't even crack the top 5 this month. But so the New York Times published a story yesterday, claimed Trump has dropped his demand that Harvard, the university, pony up $200 million.
At first, Kimmel cited Trump's frequent posts on the internet, his propensity to escalate small slights into significant conflicts, and his amazing ability to personalize almost every headline. The jokes were measured but incisive. The audience laughed comfortably in response. Everyone seemed to know the rhythm and be content to follow along because the cadence was comfortable and almost predictable.
The Spanish-speaking world to culture. Bad Bunny got a bad review from our bad president, unfortunately. He wrote, "The Super Bowl halftime show is absolutely terrible, one of the worst ever. It makes no sense, is an affront to the greatness of America, and doesn't represent our standards of success, creativity, or excellence. Nobody understands a word this guy is saying, and the dancing is disgusting, especially for young children that are watching from throughout the USA and around the world." This is a man who paid off a porn star.
Then the tone changed. Kimmel began emphasizing the recurrence, the obsession with crowd sizes, the need for allegiance, and the recycling of the same ideas packaged as fresh anger rather than making fun of the blatant theatrics. He presented it more as an ongoing performance, like to a reality show that never completely ends its season, than as political analysis. The tone tightened at that point, because comedy works best when it reveals something that people are aware of but seldom express out loud. Trump frequently reroutes storylines rather than merely responding to them. Conflict becomes oxygen, humor becomes ammunition, and criticism becomes a stage. However, Kimmel went in a different direction. He failed to match volume to volume. He made fun of the responses themselves. He avoided competing outcry and the policy argument. Rather, he drew out the pattern and relied on the audience to recognize it. Paradoxically, such self-control might have been the most crucial action of all. Trump's online statements and rebuttals seemed to validate the information more and more, creating a loop that essentially wrote itself. The escalation happened naturally, so Kimmel didn't need to escalate.
Canada is building a massive bridge between Ontario and Michigan. President Barack Hussein Obama. Is that part of his apology for the Post the other day? Or stupidly gave them a waiver so they could get around the Buy American Act. Now the Canadian government expects me as president to permit them to just take advantage of America. On top of everything else, Prime Minister Carney wants to make a deal with China, which will eat Canada alive. The first thing China will do is terminate all ice hockey being played in Canada.
Canada. This is when things start to get interesting. For a long time, Trump's public image has been based on his toughness, power, and refusal to back down from criticism. However, the optics felt different during this exchange. He appeared to be sucked into the noise rather than above it. Rather than looming over late-night comics, he was caught up in their jokes. And the internet quickly gained popularity. Clips go viral, reactions came in from all directions, his supporters hurried to his defense. The jokes were much more widely circulated by critics. What began as a monologue evolved into an analysis of contemporary media tactics. Who actually creates the story? The comic with the nightly crowd or the politician with the loud hailer? What made it stand out was Kimmel's ability to maintain composure. He didn't speak out. In the meantime, the criticism just made the spotlight shine brighter. Ratings increased, engagement on the internet increased. Each passionate reply expanded the original segment's audience. Trump might have amplified it instead of trying to stifle it. At that point, the plot began to focus on strategies rather than humor. Through audacious provocations, Trump has long mastered headline domination. However, responding to every jab might occasionally make the caricature that critics are depicting stronger. And that's precisely what appeared to happen.
All this other stuff going on. Busting into the election headquarters in Georgia, arresting journalists like Don Lemon, who is here with us tonight, suddenly shutting down the Kennedy Center for 2 years, calling for nationalized elections, Trump suing the government he runs for $10 billion. My head is spinning. I guess that's the point, but my God, remember when Trump was threatening to invade Greenland? That was not even too...
The answers elevated Kimmel, rather than discounting him as unimportant. The outcry sealed the incident in the news cycle rather than allowing it to evaporate. It turned into a feedback loop. Trump responds to Kimmel's jokes, which prompts more jokes. The cycle is seen in real time by the audience. To be honest, political satire has always used exaggeration to break down difficult facts into manageable chunks. It challenges, teases, and amuses. However, this conflict demonstrated how closely politics and entertainment are now intertwined. Nearly all of the lines are blurry. You're seeing performance stacked upon performance when a former president responds to a monologue that sparks a national discourse like a rival on a reality show. This episode was particularly stinging because of the reaction's optics as well as the joke's content. A big public reaction to a late-night episode can appear like a weakness for someone who presents himself as unwavering. Seldom does genuine confidence require shouting. The perspective changed as the responses became more heated. Perception can be just as important in politics as actuality.
With his own face on a magazine, she spanked him. He's offended by the halftime. This is a guy who's okay with this being the release of the Epstein files. He's offended for the children. The MAGAverse was so hopping mad about Bad Bunny. It really is amazing how differently people can see the same thing. Half of us saw a heartwarming story of immigrants who had dreams to come to America, work hard, get married, grow up, raise families, sing, dance,